This is really an opportunity for us to look at a fifth grade teacher's English language arts class. And of course, we're going to be looking at this through the UDL lens. So let's take a few moments and watch, see what happens.
So we talked a little bit about rhyme scheme, and we looked in a few poems and tried to figure out what the rhyme scheme would be for those poems. Where might you pull words from? What might you use for the words in your poems? What resources do you have in your possession that you could use? Lydia?
The sources and dictionaries.
Yep, you could use those. Kimon?
Other books.
You could use other books, yep, definitely. Ani?
Our textbooks.
You can use your textbooks. Julia?
Our spelling words.
Your spelling words, right. That's the one that I was thinking of in particular, is that you have this huge bank of words, spelling and vocabulary words, that you've been accumulating since September. And I've always tried to have you incorporate those words into your writing. So that's another source to use. To get back to what Amin said about figurative language, what types of figurative language are we going to be looking for?
There's a lot of building background knowledge for these kids and really kind of bringing them up to speed as to where he wants to move off for the rest of the day. I think that's really important in terms of the principles of universal design for learning. That background knowledge isn't something that we can always assume. It's been probably at least 24 hours since they have talked about these kinds of things before, and you just can't assume that they're going to recall that. So he's really doing a lot of building back of that information and getting the kids on board, and they are. Right. They know their stuff.
And on top of that, just supporting the memory of these terms and rhyme schemes, and helping the kids to, again, provide examples of what these look like. So supporting the memory of that.
And I think at the same time he was also highlighting the critical features of a poem. Here's the things to look for in a poem. So we really did quite a few of the supportive things for presenting information, all in that very brief time.
Right, and it wasn't just an exam kind of a situation for the students. They were able to look at their notes. They were obviously referencing back to some key information that they'd had previously, so they've got some supports for them to do that as well.
What was good was we're now talking about the expressive kind of guideline, because he's preparing them to be expressive. And he really makes explicit the kind of resources. So he's assuming that everybody's going to use scaffolds and resources. And so he's reminding them there's the thesaurus, there's these things to use, which is a great technique to say there's lots of tools to use. Let's remind ourselves what they are.
You have some notes that we took from poems that we looked at yesterday. And when we get back to our desks to work independently for Writer's Workshop, I want you to use those notes, and you can use your books too, to come up with your own couplets and your own quatrains. And if we have some time later, we'll have some people sit in the author's chair and share some of what they've written. Okay? So do you all know what your roles are going to be for after today's reading?
Yes.
Okay. Who's going to be the discussion director? Okay, who's going to be the summarizer, the connector, artful artist, word wizard? Okay, good. You got your resources to use for when you start reading. Go ahead, decide, as a group, decide what you think you're going to be reading. If the next chapter is really short, maybe you're going to read 2 chapters. If it's a long chapter, maybe just read the 1 chapter. But I leave it up to you to decide. Okay? How are you going to, how did you decide?
What was really nice and explicit for the students was the roles that they have been playing, and then preparing for the roles that they're going to play in the future in terms of the discussion groups that they're having around the literature that they're involved with. It's just real nice to see how explicit he was about it, and that he's also providing choice for the students in the number of ways in which they can approach their next activity. So his roles are just really fun, the artful artist and the word wizard and the summarizer and the connector and the discussion leader or document director. All really very clear roles.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the roles themselves. Tap a diversity of skills that students might have. I mean, so there was the word wizard. So at some point, someone might be one that likes to look at the hard copy resources and be able to find words in text. Or as the artful artist, someone might be better able to display what they know or understand through artwork. So even his roles and how they were defined allows for diversification of what the students know and how they can express themselves.
He's letting them make choices, not only just about like what would you read, but how are you going to express it? How are you going to decide what is the right thing, and supporting. It's very, a lot of choice here.
I think it also points out how choice can be used with high expectations. That you're not always going to be the discussion director, David, because that's what you're good at. You're going to do the artful artist one day, even though you might not be able to draw. But so I think it still has an air of high expectations for the students.
Well, there are other ways to express how you think and feel other than the text that we're taking a look at. You can also do it through drawing. You can do it through speaking.
What kind of a rhyme scheme do you think you want to use?
Like A, B, A, B.
Okay.
So like the first verse is gonna rhyme with the third verse, and the second verse is gonna rhyme with the fourth verse.
Verse or line?
Line.
Line. Okay. Do you have an idea for a topic that you want to do, or are you just coming up with the words first?
I'm just coming up with the words first.
And then you'll pull a topic from that.
Yeah, and see what words I can use.
Okay. How are you doing? Were there any words that you were stuck on that you didn't know the meaning of yet?
No.
Okay. If you got to a word that you were stuck on, what'd you do?
I looked at the spelling dictionary to see what the meaning was.
Okay. All right. Are you good though? Do you need any assistance, or are you good to work?
Good.
Okay. All right. I'll check in with you in a little bit to see how your rhyming's going.
Well, just in terms of what the student described here too, I mean, he was just allowing the student to articulate the steps he wanted to take in order to write the poem. And he didn't dictate, first you have to do this, 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 but allowed the student to process that. Well, first I'm going to write these rhyming words, and then I'm going to look and see whether I can call a topic from that and then move on. And he saw that the student had an explicit plan, and it sounded good, and allowed him that autonomy in the development of his poem, of his work.
I know, I was struck by that because I could never do a poem that way myself.
Right.
And maybe not him, but he heard there was a plan, and he said,
Yeah.
great, go for it.
I'll check back later.
Yeah, a lot of times we see classrooms where the teacher has to become the boss, the chief executive. But here, what they've really done is release that to what's important, which is helping the students become the executives here, everything from setting a goal to monitoring their progress.
Boys and girls, just look up here for a moment. It's about the time that I want you to just transition from what you've been doing. If you were doing writer's workshop, you can switch to your spelling. If you were doing spelling, you can switch to writer's workshop to start your poetry for the day. If you're switching to writer's workshop, do take a moment to look at the writing timeline chart. If you're at pre-write and you're moving to rough draft, you can move your name. If you are in another stage from an earlier piece of writing and you need to move back to pre-write, you can go move your name for that. And if you've been writing, just finish up the line that you're working on, and you can start in on your spelling.
The more we see this, we see all of the aspects of executive functioning is scaffolded. And then when he talks about the timeline, he locates them in where in the process of writing are we? And he's saying that each student needs to locate themselves. Are we in the pre-writing phase or whatever? So the timeline itself is a support for planning and strategy development, so you know where you are in this process. And we've talked also about always indicating what resources are available and helping the students manage those resources and be able to do them. And we also talked about, lastly, that he is always encouraging them to monitor their progress and modeling it for them. And he does it himself, showing here's where we are in the lesson, and he's encouraging them to say, where are you, rather than telling them. So that I think why the classroom looks so, excuse the expression, orderly is because there's a lot of executive function distributed in the classroom, so it never looks like people aren't on task. And it's remarkable how people seem to know everything from what the goal is to how they're going to know how they're doing. And I love it that he's not the only executive in the classroom.